Hello everyone and welcome to the stream. My name is Hubert and I'll be your host today. I'm here with Cross, the lead game designer,
Hello, it's me.
Jamie, art supervisor.
Hello, guys.
Jamie is very loud. I need to quickly adjust your volume.
Oh,
Soup,
sorry.
level design supervisor, and I can immediately
Hi.
tell. Oh, sorry, I can immediately tell I need to make a slightly wider browser for Soup. And XPJ50,
Hi.
marketing, the manager and narrative designer.
What's up, guys?
Hello.
Everyone's
It's me,
saying
I'm
that
the
you're bald.
scientist. Sorry?
Everyone's noticing you're bald now.
Yeah, I've been for a while.
Someone asked, dude, what happened to you?
Acceptance, that's all. So yeah, hello everyone. I'll be mostly your host here, but from what I understand, X3 has a list of things that we would like to go through, so I'll be giving the mic to him right now.
Before we begin, thank you everyone for your support with the public beta, and so far with the stream, thank you Witty985 for £2, and thank you Laser for 2 BAMs. Anyways,
BAMs are
so
back.
here's BAMs are absolutely acceptable. We love BAMs in this chat. Anyways, what we're gonna be doing this stream, as you guys have probably seen from the title, we're gonna be doing a Q&A on SEPSL, specifically about the public beta. If you guys remember, sometime in August, I think, we gave out a Google form on a Steam post asking you guys for questions for an FAQ. We didn't forget about it, contrary to popular belief. We've been working on it. We've been delayed though because of 14.0's release and stuff. But now we're back. We have answers and we are ready to answer them. The first half of the Q&A will mostly be read off of this document by myself and answered by the 4 developers here. And after we're done with that, we're gonna move on to chat, and we're gonna take on some live questions to answer. That will go on for around maybe an hour or so, and after that, after we're done with the Q&A, we'll be playing some Secret Lab for maybe an hour or so, and afterwards the stream will end. So yeah, should be a fun time.
Should be a fun time indeed. Just want to add up that it's taken a while, not only because of 14.0 release, but also because of how many questions we have received, and they all need to have to be scrolled through and answered and, you know, properly checked out with all the teams, so to make sure that we are representing the same opinion here. Thank you in the meanwhile. Thank you for well, I can't scroll up. Where's my mouse? Okay. Thank you, Frains, for £2. Baldbird on top. Thank you very much indeed.
I think a question that a lot of people are wondering right now is, how do we think 14.0 has been so far? Are we satisfied with how the 14.0 release has been?
Personally, I have
yeah.
been. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yep. I've noticed a lot of players having a ton of fun running around the new heavy containment zone. Definitely shooting each other way more than they previously were, and generally jumping off the pit into the achromatic bait room. Lots of fun to be had there.
So we're all quite how do you feel, Hubert, as game director? Do you think you're satisfied? Do you think you're proud with the 14.0?
I'm very proud with how quickly we've managed to develop so many rooms. I know that it's been a year, so the update itself has been taking a long time, but the fact that we've managed to put so much content in a relatively short time span, that's something that I'm really happy about, and I'm happy that we managed to deliver it on the public beta with obviously certain bugs, but there's probably quite a lot of issues that we still haven't resolved. But overall, everything seems to be working, and everything seems to be aligned with our expectations. So I'm personally really satisfied.
Fantastic. Everyone seems to be really enjoying the public beta so far, according to the quick poll we did. And yeah, honestly, absolutely fantastic time to be an SL player right now.
Definitely a couple of bugs to fix it, a few balance changes to be made, but overall it's really good.
Right. Saying that, let's move on to a couple of questions. These will be pretty fun. Just jump in whenever you want to answer something and add something to the answer. Okay, we'll start with a couple of questions about SCPs in the game. This is a pretty big one that got asked a lot in the Google form. What do we think about what is our stance on adding new playable SCPs?
Yep, so we definitely 100% intend to add a new playable SCP into the game. I'm sorry to say that the secret playable SCP for 14.0 is not real. You've been lied to by various people on the Steam forums. But we do 100% intend to add a new playable SCP. We've got a few working ideas. We want to explore those further and get into development on those as soon as we can.
Basically, we want to avoid a situation. We're taking it slow because we want to avoid the situation that we have with certain Rush concepts in the past. And I just realized that my music is not looping. I'm just gonna quickly loop it again. So we had issues in the past like SCP-096 or other smaller concepts that we didn't have enough time to properly playtest, or didn't actually ended up playtesting them. It's not even about the time. It's mostly about the procedures that we went through. So we are trying to make sure that the new SCP that we're adding in the game is going to have its own identity, and it's going to be fun to play us and against. We can't, you know, the problem with adding a new SCP is that we want to make sure that it's a unique SCP which brings something new to the table. It's not just another SCP that walks around and left clicks. We could add probably 20, 30, 40 SCPs in the game by now, but the problem is all about making those experiences unique. Right now in the game, it's difficult to point out two SCPs which basically play the same way. Obviously there are certain similarities between players. All SCPs use left click to attack, except for maybe 079 and 173 when being looked at. But basically, if you look at every SCP, the gameplay, the way you need to play this SCP is pretty much different from one another, and we want to make sure that this uniqueness is shared between is also shared by the new SCP. And we have, it's not about even not having any ideas how to do that. That's not the problem, but it's all about trying to figure out how it's going to affect the game and how potential limits it may introduce in the future when it comes to like level design or adding new items. So that is why we've been taking our time.
I think another important thing to touch on there is as well, back when we initially added those SCPs, or rather I should say Cuba added those initial SCPs, there wasn't much thought behind it. It was just sort of, you know,
adding something for fun.
Game. Yeah, adding something for fun. There isn't much thought about it. This game's not going to last very long. But over the years, we've become very experienced developers. We know a lot about like why those original SCPs didn't work and why we had to change them. We've learned a lot over the process of developing Parabellum, and the other rebalances that we've done for SCPs. And now I think we're where we can, mimicry. We can feel confident in saying, we definitely know what we're doing in terms of workflow, and we feel confident enough now that we can begin working on some prototypes to start seeing more playable SCPs.
We've had a few concepts. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a lot of work. We've had to work through a few concepts so far. A few have not made the list already. But we're working it down, and we'll get started on that.
Yep, we have a few concepts that we are planning on trying out. I don't feel comfortable sharing too many details right now, considering that this is still a pretty far in the future concept, but we are indeed planning on adding more playable SCPs.
Exciting stuff. You mentioned earlier something about 079. It's pretty common knowledge now that a lot of the playbase finds SCP-079 as a competitively suboptimal to fight against SCP. Do you guys have any plans to update or rework SCP-079 in any way?
A full rework, not really. Maybe certain individual abilities, but as it stands right now, I'm not sure if the problem with 079 would be solved by a full rework. It's either a problem at its core which can't be resolved by any standard rework. Or it's a problem with individual abilities. In this case, I believe it's the latter. It's mostly the interactions with doors. It's either super limiting and it's not fun for 079 because everything is on cooldown and you can't do anything because everything is, on cooldown or you don't have enough auxiliary power. Or it's the other way around. Players are frustrated because they keep getting their doors closed on their faces and they can't voice crack, and they can't progress.
I think to boil the problem down, I think the major problem that we're trying to solve with the 7.9, in theory at least, is that if there is too many doors, 079 is way too oppressive. If there isn't enough doors, 079 isn't able to really do all that much, and that comes down to the primary ability of 079, which has been door manipulation for the past couple of years. So we want to try to get ahead of that problem and solve it before too long.
Yep. If there were only some solutions that would involve giving 079 more power without having to rely on doors.
Yeah, curious that. I definitely haven't worked on anything related to that. Definitely not.
You all said that you wanted to add like more unique mechanics for SCPs, each individual SCP. Something that comes to mind when it comes to unique mechanics is the recontainment procedure, such as the one for 079 at the moment. But we all remember that SCP-106 used to have the femur breaker. What are our current plans with the femur breaker? Will it ever make a return in the future?
We don't currently have any plans for a femur breaker, but as it pertains to SCP recontainment procedures generally, we want to explore them where possible, but there's a big conflict in how SCPs are recontained in lore and how much that matches with fun and interesting gameplay. The reason 079 works is because there isn't really another way to kill it, and that kill mechanic requires coordination from both teams in order to start and prevent. Whereas with 106, it was very boring. You walked into a room and pressed a button, and that player was dead. You also had to sacrifice a player, which also wasn't fun for that specific individual. I remember a lot of situations where you would just have a D-class that was pretty much forced by gunpoint into that machine. And then two players are missing out and nobody's really benefiting in terms of fun. So, recontainment procedures, they have to sort of avoid that problem. And we're not going to prioritize recontainment procedures over having fun.
Yep.
Nice.
There are definitely some roleplay scenario to also consider, like obviously Femur Breaker was a pretty big feature for role-playing servers, but it's always the issue of balancing individual like player play styles. We have players who play the game for the shooters aspect. We have players playing for the role-playing aspect. We have players playing for the for the multiplayer and social aspect. Others for the horror aspect. Like there is a lot of balancing factors that need to be a lot of compromises that have to be made, and Femur Breaker fell victim to that compromise.
On the topic of adding new SCPs, new playable SCPs specifically, will we ever consider the possibility of adding perhaps AI-controlled SCPs or neutral SCPs?
Let's just clarify here that by AI we mean like NPCs, not actual ChatGPT powered things.
Yeah.
We mean NPCs. So, Cross, you could answer that as well.
Yep, so we do, in a sense, already have neutral SCPs, if you really want to stretch the definition. Like, we have 244, which is harmful to both humans and SCPs, and that's definitely something that we want a bit more of. SCPs aren't always buddy-buddy with each other, they will conflict and harm each other. So passive neutral threats or AI-controlled threats, those are both on the table as it pertains to future developments. The playable neutral SCPs are certainly much less likely to happen, especially considering that it quite strongly contradicts our current gameplay loop.
So I can also add in that, like, if there is a if an SCP can be made player controlled, we will always prefer this one. And if we are planning on adding a new playable SCP, the next playable SCP will definitely be also human controlled. I'm talking about like real walkable humanoid or not humanoid SCPs that can interact with the world. So I can probably make that promise safely, that the next playable SCP will actually be playable and not NPC controlled. There were certain plans that we had in the past. We considered the possibility if 096 didn't work out at all and there was no way of saving 096, we could potentially turn it into an NPC. Again, not a real plan right now, not a real plan anymore. We have a few things that we want to try out before we go to that nuclear option. So like 096 is probably never getting removed, even though we have a lot of 096 haters, but the removal would probably result in him becoming an NPC, which again is a very small possibility at that moment. There's a few things you want to try out before. Anything we missed out from that question?
No, I think that was a good, well answered question. That was a pretty good answer throughout the whole thing. So SCP is always fun stuff, a lot of plans, but you know what, we don't know we don't know what's gonna happen in the next 6 months. But to summarize, we got a lot of plans for like new SCP, so just keep on following the game. So next set of questions will be about humans, the human classes, such as human weapons, human classes, factions, etc. A question that popped up a lot in chat: will there be any new human teams / factions ever added to SCP Secret Lab, like Serpent's Hand?
That would be very unlikely, mostly because like a lot of core in the game, like we have experimented in the past with, say, the Flamingos, adding a new faction in the game, but we do like the simplicity of having just the 5 factions, or like actually 3 major factions: SCPs, Chaos, and MTF. Maybe Cross can expand slightly onto that. It's not entirely excluded. Like again, you kind of already talked about like 244 being technically a separate faction, which is both 2 SCPs and all humans, like that, a faction that wants to kill everyone. But obviously, I'm pretty sure the person asking it asked for something different.
Yep. So with new human factions, I really love a lot of the stuff that is in the lore. Like, you know, there's a lot of factions that could theoretically work. You know, you've got the Unusual Instances unit, you've got the Sarkic cult, you've got groups like the GOC, and all of these would theoretically interact with the game in a completely unique way. The main thing that we run into when it comes to that, and it's a pretty major problem, is that the current factions and the way they work interact in a very specific way with the human classes that exist in the game, as well as with the SCPs. For example, let's talk about the Sarkic cult, for example. They're not really going to be the allies of D-Class, the SCPs, or anything like that. Their specific goal is to, you know, make the flesh grow, to put it very briefly. So you'd probably want something in the game that matches their specific objective, so you need to change a fair bit about how the core gameplay loop works, just to accommodate that one extra faction. You also want to explore things like the fact that a lot of them have fleshy mutations. Well, how do you do that? You've got to introduce things like human-based abilities, which is extremely complex as it is. The GOC, a faction that has literal wizards working for them. They have mech suits and all that sort of stuff. You got to consider like how you might go about implementing stuff like that. And just handling the Chaos Insurgency and Foundation right now is a lot to handle for us. When the game is more stable and in a place where we feel comfortable sort of not overhauling major systems, we might take a look at this question again, but it's not something that we're going to consider for a long time.
The question with new playable factions, new playable human factions, I think, is very, very dangerous because it leaves a lot of room for scope creep and feature creep.
That is true, and it's also like a similar issue to the SCPs. We also need to make sure that it's unique and it has a point. Sometimes it's better, like the current existing classes already give us a lot of room for expansion. Like we could possibly add, again, not a real plan, we could potentially add different types of ways of Chaos Insurgency or different units of MTF entering the facility. They have the same objectives but different gear, different, you know, maybe slightly different objectives, but like it's much simpler for new players to handle and for us to maintain and for us to keep all the relations. The main issue with adding new factions is that it adds complexity and it requires us to have it to be fun and unique, and that's another thing to maintain. So realistically, right now we haven't even hit the ceiling of what's possible with the existing factions, and I believe it's going to be at least 20 years before we do so.
20 years, wow.
Yeah, just exaggerating obviously, but right now there is no real plan on adding new factions. Again, not at least not human factions. Something like the Flamingos is, as a seasonal feature, is still a thing. But yeah, I believe we can move to the next question.
I think just to summarize that, our Northwest's main views on this question, on just the dynamic of SCPSL in general, is that we want to preserve and keep the three-way battle as much as possible. Foundation versus SCPs versus Chaos Insurgency, and adding a fourth faction to the mix, or even a fifth faction to the mix, that will just mess up like what's already established in gameplay. The most likely thing, the simplest thing we could do, would be to add on to the existing factions, such as adding new types of CI, adding new types of MTF, who are aligned to the Foundation, who are aligned to the CI, maybe the different kind of scientist, etc. But when it comes to adding a whole new different faction with a set of whole new objectives, at the moment that doesn't look very realistic.
Yeah, that seems accurate.
It's much more likely that we add classes rather than factions.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, so like regarding the factions, probably not. Regarding the classes, probably yes, but not in the near future. That is the TLDR here.
This is a segue of that because we're talking about weapons and classes and uniqueness. Will we be adding any new types of weapons that aren't just bullet weapons, such as flamethrowers, grenade launchers, AoE weapons, melee weapons?
In 14.0 we are introducing, as you probably know, the rework of experimental weapons. That means Jailbird is going to be spawnable, same with Particle Disruptor, and we also are reworking the Micro HID. So these are already 3 unique weapons which aren't bullet weapons, and we are also considering adding a few unique weapons in the long future. So again, no real we have a couple of ideas that we would like to experiment, so right now nothing is really set in stone, and it kind of goes back to what I said about the previous question and about the new playable SCPs. It's all about making sure that it's not about just putting features for the sake of having features. It would be nice to have a couple of extra weapons, but we want to make sure that they're unique, that they're not affecting the game in a negative way. We want them to be fun, and we want them to feel unique, and we want them to feel like, you know, something more than just adding weapons for the sake of adding weapons. It's all about filling some niches. Or niche. Is there even a plural of niche? I don't know. But yeah, that's
one thing I'll say on this topic is that for especially keen-eyed players, they'll have noticed that we designed the system to accommodate for 3 possible special weapon spawns, and yet currently in the game there's only 2 special weapons. So, you know, think about that as you might. Let that run in your mind for a bit.
Yep, let that sink in.
Are we gonna get a third weapon locker that spawns and you open it, it's completely empty?
Right now it's only 1 or 2. There is a 50% chance for one locker and 50% chance for the other.
And yeah,
for both of them, I mean.
So, with the topic of classes, will we be adding? We'll get back to earlier. Do we have any plans to give certain classes, such as the facility guards or the scientist or the D class, more specific objectives other than just escaping the facility, or even MTF and CI?
I definitely think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think we talked about this a fair bit in the previous answer, where we do see that there's a lot of potential, specifically in the Chaos and MTF, for much more features. I do personally recognize the Facility Guards as one of the classes a good number of people don't enjoy as much as the other classes. I think right now, from polls and stuff, D class is the most popular. I might be wrong there. But Guards is definitely one of the ones that has been repeatedly reported as not so fun. So that is an area of focus of mine specifically. Definitely want to improve everyone as much as possible there. For D-Class and Scientists, we want to make the act of exploring the facility and being threatened as fun as possible.
Will we make an effort to try and make existing classes a bit more unique by adding specific passive abilities such as perks? For example, the new MTF could maybe have inbuilt night vision, or maybe the Chaos Insurgents would have immunity to certain gas weapons such as 939's Amnestic Cloud or a gas grenade if we were to add one.
That is a very valid argument, which is based on logic and realism. Like, you know, MTF has goggles, probably night vision goggles, so he should have night visions, right? And then we actually went and gave the proper lore explanation that is not real night vision goggles, it's just mimetic suppression goggles, right? And we are considering making it so there are certain details in the map that appear paranormal, but you cannot see them as an MTF. So that is something that we are planning as a little detail to encapsulate that idea. But realistically, this isn't really that much of a deal in the first place. Games do it all the time. Just because a character has a gas mask doesn't mean that it's actually being used, especially if we're planning on adding more variants in the future. Possibly also adding, you know, variants of the MTF which doesn't feature the model, the goggles. So like that is going to be a certain limiting factor if it actually ends up being a feature. So as of right now, we haven't really experimented with class-specific perks. It is possible that we're gonna make something like that for individual classes. Could be. I'm actually not gonna provide any details right now, but realistically, probably not. That is the answer here. We want the player experience, the human experience, to be pretty similar to each other. There could be some class-specific abilities, but probably not role passives. We haven't really thought about it too, like we haven't really planned anything regarding that yet. So it may happen in the future. Yeah, Cross, you can take over. I'm actually a little lost, lost my train of thought here.
I think a good way to sort of contextualize the problem here is if we think about a Chaos Insurgent gas mask, right? You have to ask, where would that specifically be useful? You want class-specific abilities to feel like they're impacting the game and that you're getting a tangible benefit from them. If you gave like the Chaos Insurgents a gas mask that worked, you would also need to have mechanics that interacted with that gas mask. There's only one specific gas-based attack in the game right now, and that's 939's Amnestic Cloud.
And technically decontamination, but it still would be really bad if you could just enter light containment zone and be locked down in light containment and just survive it.
That would be pretty unfun, I will say. So, you know, stuff like that, you've got to sort of implement some other features that make it feel much more useful than just implementing it just for the sake of it being consistent with the fact that they have a gas mask. So,
when it comes to human gameplay, like what we're doing right now, how people play the human classes in game, do we have any considerations to rework how exactly the movement system works? Do we have any plans on adding crouching or perhaps movement acceleration or all the fun stuff that modern games have been doing with movement systems?
I feel like the current system in SL is pretty unique on its own, and it's kinda like the entire game ever since has been designed around the currently existing system. It's not like we during mimicry, I believe, we have experimented with crouching for a little bit. The main issues here are feasibility concerns regarding animations. I'm not sure if that would still be the case with the new models. We haven't really developed the new models to be working with crouching either, so I'm not exactly sure how inverse kinematics and all the systems that we have would work out with that. So that is the main issue. The second issue is how does it affect gameplay? So will we actually like how crouching works? It sounds like a great idea on the paper, you know, being able to hide more easily and something like that. But again, also being able to hide more easily and potentially prolonging the game. It's nice, like hiding and being able to hide anywhere is great in the early game where there is a lot of players around and the person who hides the worst, you know, dies first. But when it's actually when we're getting to the later stages of the game, hiding becomes a pretty big problem, and crouching would expand on that. So there's certain drawbacks that need to be considered when adding features like that, but it's not exactly excluded right now. We haven't really decided for sure, but probably not in the nearest future.
I think I'd like to just expand on that is crouching and proning also pretty heavily go against the direction that we have for the game, and we generally like to think of SL as a fast-paced game. When you're in combat, you're moving around a lot, you're trying to avoid enemies, juking, closing doors, you know, try to get away from the threat or get close to fight them. You're moving around a lot, you're using sprint, you're managing your stamina. And if you had crouching and proning, it would slow down the gameplay a lot, to the point where I personally feel like it would make the game a lot less fun, even if you're not personally making use of those systems.
Thank you, Frynus, for the £5. Muffin asks if mugs will be fixed in this update. I don't really
Probably
understand
not. Oh my god, that is an old joke from like 5 or 6 years ago. I haven't.
What is that? What does that question mean? Too young for this.
I literally couldn't speak English back then. I mean, I was like very basic English, but there was this guy called Muffin who pointed out that mugs in the PC-15 light containment zone are super small, and I was making an argument that maybe they're espresso caps, and I also believe there was a joke about them saying it's espresso and not espresso, and I was correcting them it's espresso. But you know, that was that. I'm just a trip down memory lane right now. It's probably not fixed yet. Sorry?
It's a super old joke. Sorry, Cross?
A deep cut is what I said.
Yeah.
That's a super old joke. I don't even know that. Yeah, that's insane. So Frames must be a very, very old member of the community. Let's see then. Let's talk a bit about the map. So Jamie and Soup can chime in a bit on this.
Yes.
So firstly, we all love the heavy containment zone rework, right? Absolutely fantastic rework, in my humble but correct opinion. So the next few reworks would be the next few zones, light containment zone, entrance zone, and surface. Do we have any plans to rework light containment zone, entrance zone, and surface zone?
Short answer, yes. Like obviously, like stuff like entrance zone, it's literally a containment breach asset. Surface zone is something we've promised for a long time, so it's sort of getting a bit embarrassing that we haven't, you know. But yeah, it's all in line. We will be like going through and hopefully changing everything by the time we're dead.
Yeah. I'll add on top as well. Obviously, with how heavy containment zone looks now, just speaking from like an art perspective, obviously I've seen people say this a lot. Is that now that heavy has been done up all like nice and fancy, all the other zones are like out of place because of how like outdated they look. So of course, yeah, at some point, we're gonna rework all the zones to kind of keep the quality of the environment even across the game. So yes, of course.
Yep, that answers the question.
So yep.
Trying to figure out how to put my plushies on my microphone the entire stream, and I'm embarrassing myself right now.
So talking about reworking other zones, I think we need to. I think it's about time to just address this publicly because it's been a while. There was a question. Why do some development aspects take so long, even after being teased to the community years ago, such as the Surface Zone rework?
Jamie, do you want to answer this, or do I want to?
Oh, it's probably me that should answer that.
you-
Why
you-
it's
I mean,
taking so long?
Hubert's the one who's been here.
Yeah,
I'm
I was
here-
gonna
I'm
say
here at
Hubert should
fault.
answer.
Because I was the one who. So, like, I'm gonna make a quick rundown of how we ended up announcing the Surface Zone. It was basically. Right, imagine this. It's like 2018 or whatever it was, and we are still not aware of what are the limits of our capabilities. We have just gotten a lot of new staff members. We have gotten a lot of new. Technologies, and we have our Patreon. Our Patreon just started, and we have gotten the first hundreds of bucks on our billing accounts, and it all seems like you can really do everything. And when I received a couple of the first assets from the artists that were assigned on the Surface Zone, we decided to make Surface Zone as the next big project that we want to do. We started making some assets, and the moment I received the first asset, I made a wonderful decision of just placing them randomly in the editor in a way that roughly looks like something interesting. I made a screenshot of it, I put it on our Patreon, and excitingly said that we are doing something huge is coming soon.
Huge is coming.
Obviously,
Its biggest regret.
Obviously, reworking an entire zone is a bigger undertaking, especially like even now, even all those years later, and with our budget being 10 times or 100 times more like 10 times bigger, and our artists being much more experienced, it still has been a huge challenge to rework individual rooms in heavy containment zone. Heavy containment zone has this benefit of being able to be split into smaller manageable pieces, like rooms, for example. You don't have to rework the entire zone at once. You can rework it one room at a time. There is this saying, how to eat an elephant. It's like one piece at a time, right? You cannot eat an entire elephant in one bite. So basically, being able to break down a project like zone rework into smaller manageable pieces, like individual rooms, was the only way we could have accomplished that, and still it was very challenging. Now, Surface Zone is, I don't want to say it's a one room because it's still splittable into smaller parts, and that's what we're planning on doing. That's how we're planning on approaching it. But we didn't have that experience, we didn't have that knowledge back in the day, and yeah, so I made a decision to publicly announce our plans to rework the Surface Zone, not realizing that with the resources and experience that we had at the time, we were never able to deliver it. Yep. So that's basically my story.
Yeah. Okay. Sip, this is a question for you. What is Level Design's goal moving forward when reworking the facility?
Our goal. Well, we want to add like more interesting features. So, like currently with Heavy, we did quite a lot of experimentation. You'll notice like the rooms are like quite different, like compared to like other rooms, in that like some heavy rooms are very, very different to the others. You've got the whole node system where you're like mixing between completely different doorway types, stuff like that. So I think what we'd like to do is take like what we've learned from Heavy and sort of try and apply it to like get a single, more consistent zone that's still like fun and interesting and engaging.
Cross, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so when we started working on Heavy Containment Zone, me and the artists, we had a meeting at that time, and we discussed what the direction of Heavy Containment Zone was going to be. And we wanted to make sure that it felt like the one of the central hubs of the game. There'd be a lot of players interacting in this area, and there needs to be a lot of unique and interesting gameplay opportunities. We wanted Heavy Containment Zone to feel like a maze, where you're constantly getting lost, you're running in, you're finding new encounters, and every single place you go to is a unique opportunity for some interesting combat. We wanted to make sure that the zones that we make reflect the gameplay ethos of the game, which is, you know, making sure that you know, the game is replayable, and the map has to reflect this.
Okay, and that's already kind of reflected with the new Heavy Containment Zone, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's a huge inspiration behind designing the clutter system and the new doors that we have in the zone itself.
I mean, is entrance zone when we were entrance zone and light containment zone, will they roughly be the same as heavy containment zone in terms of how open they are, or will they have their own like thing layout wise?
We want each zone to have its own thing. Each zone should feel like a unique part of the game. When you're traveling between, you know, heavy containment zone and entrance zone, you should feel like you're stepping into a different environment, and the gameplay and map layout needs to reflect that too.
But each area of the map will be very unique, and you'll have
very
its
unique,
own.
but it will have the similar art style in a way that it doesn't feel like you're playing a completely different game. I believe that this is the criticism that is right here, that if you step from heavy containment to entrance zone, it's a huge downgrade when it comes to visuals, when it comes to atmosphere and everything like that. We want to make sure that future zone reworks will also be atmospheric and will also have the similar feel, but the entire environment and the storytelling with the environment is going to be completely different. So we still want the difference to be pronounced. It's just it's just going to be in the similar visual style, so it still looks like a single game and not two different games.
Artistically consistent with varying gameplay is the idea.
Yeah, aesthetically consistent. Is that what you said?
Yes,
Aesthetically
Yeah.
consistent. Yeah, that's a pretty good way of putting it, I guess. Just to quickly reiterate to the audience here, because we've got a couple of very perceptive people in the chat, and I want to validate them a bit. Yes, these questions are kind of scripted because they come from the Q&A form from July 22, earlier this year. The questions themselves are on a Google document. The answers are also on a Google document,
But
which
we're not
will
using
be.
them right now.
But we are not reading the questions off of the Google document directly. We're expanding upon them. The full release of the Q&A, with all the questions and all the TLDRs pretty much of what we're saying right now, will be posted sometime next month.
Yep, we're just highlighting some of the... Oh, it's my kettle in the background in case you can hear it. I'm not sure if you can hear it. But we're just highlighting some of the more important or like interesting questions that we just wanted to talk about. These are scripted in a way that we have received them and we knew about those questions before we started the stream. I believe we'll also be answering a couple of questions from the chat later on. We just wanted to go through the questions that have already been asked and are currently in the document. The answers are not scripted in this case. We're just answering to right now, which is why we're stuttering that much and losing our trains of thought all the time. We are, however, and those questions also are received from the community. So we didn't write them ourselves. They're just, you know, the most frequently asked questions that have been sent to us when we asked about them in July, right?
Yep, July
So that's
22nd.
pretty much it.
So, one question from the chat, because they did a super chat. Thank you, Sinzon, for 5 USD. Will there be any compensation for SCP-07 and having less things to interact with in heavy containment zone? Cross, I think you can answer that.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier with 079 not having the best interaction either with lots of doors or no doors at all. We want to try and take another look at 079's toolkit to make sure that they're actually able to play the game in situations where either, you know, sometimes all the doors have been destroyed, or sometimes there's no doors in a specific area, or there's too many doors and people getting cut off and not having fun. And that comes just to the core of the SCP, which requires another look at it.
Do we want to talk about the special thing, the special door? The one that we mentioned in the
Special
Patreon post?
I don't know what you're talking about right now.
The 079 bulkhead.
Oh. Are you sure? This is what we talked about?
That was on the Patreon post, remember? Like we mentioned that.
I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to right now.
079 map interaction in heavy containment.
Okay, so we did want to have, okay, I was confused, like, are we adding some 079 specific bulkhead doors? What are you talking about? So what you're referring to is the ability for 079 to interact with bulkheads from within the map view, which is something that we still haven't tested feasibility wise, so we don't know if it's even going to be easy to implement. If it requires us to rework the entire map, then it's not making it in, but we are currently planning on having the bulkhead doors being openable and closable through the map. Is that what you were referring to, or is...
I'll get back to that question in a sec. Someone's probably gonna ask that in chat later on, but yeah. Let's see. Next question. So this has something to do with SCP-106. What are our plans with the pocket dimension in the future?
Oh, would be nice to have purple goob in here, I feel.
No, I can't really speak to the art direction that we want to go for with the pocket dimension, but we do certainly want to try to experiment with the gameplay of the pocket dimension a fair bit. It's certainly very boring just going into a completely new dimension and just finding that it's gambling between 8 doors to find out if you live or die. We want to make sure that, you know, that element of the game is either fun or it's not there. You can't really have an in-between. So when it comes time to give 106 a big pass, Pocket Dimension will certainly get some treatment there too.
Yep.
Okay. Here we go. Let's get back to the previous question. So I'm opening the Patreon portal right now. August Patreon posts new. It's easy always. It's a public post. Heavy containment zone bunker door and SCP-079 variant. Cross, you know about that one, right?
Yeah,
you
know
wrote about it.
So we wanted to experiment with giving 079 a bit more like attack in heavy containment zone. We haven't currently got a working prototype for those doors yet, but we do plan on experimenting with that internally. And if it's something that we end up liking, which is, you know, you slam a door on people, it crushes them to death, and it opens back up, or just seals off a corridor, we will, you know, send it to you guys so you can have some fun with it. Otherwise, it'll likely just end up getting scrapped. It's something we haven't experimented with just yet.
Yep.
Cool beans. This section here, this is gonna be a bit more technical. It is about the development of the game itself and updating the game. First question, will we be improving the game's optimization?
I can show a few things if you want.
You can?
Because there's, I'm actually, hold on, let me just quickly launch Unity. There is a few things that we have been working on. Now, this isn't a promise that is 100% going to improve like double or triple your FPS, but we have slightly improved our calling system. I'm gonna just quickly launch the two versions of the game, two Unities, to compare how it works in the existing version and how it works with the older version. I'm just gonna quickly go to my cooling camera. Now, I mispronounce this word all the time. I can't pronounce the U in calling. I don't know if it's cooling or calling or whatever. I am mispronouncing that. It's probably something in between. So if I say anything that sounds like this word, that's what I'm referring to. I'm referring to the occlusion calling, which is the system that prevents your computer from calculating geometry that you aren't able to see. We can jump to another question. I'm just gonna quickly set up my setup real quick.
Sure. Let's see. Someone asked, will we add more achievements?
We did.
Oh, about that. What is our biggest priority when designing updates, and how do we determine that?
That is a
let's start
question
with
to who? Sorry, could you repeat? I'm currently setting up Unity. Could you repeat that?
What is the thing that has the biggest priority when designing an update, and how do we determine that within the studio?
Usually by what you actually want to do, which is completely biased and up to us. That is the short answer. The actual answer is that it's always about striking a balance between what community wants and what is the vision for our game. We occasionally put out feedback forms and ask people what they expect to see in the game, how they like the features that we have added, and what they think about it. And that's how we prioritize and decide what's coming in the the game next. But it's usually about having a good mix between some new features, some fixes, some optimization, some balance changes, things like that. It's all about every update having a little bit of everything. Cross can expand upon that if you want.
Yep, so I think 14.0 is a really good thing to dissect in this regard. In terms of like how we prioritize this, right? Heavy containment zone was not something that was super particularly asked for, but it's something that we really needed to do. We had a lot of assets that needed to be made for future zones. We had a lot of concepts that we wanted to expand upon and generally do a lot of artistic work in that regard, which Jamie can talk about a bit later. And then we had Respawn Overhaul, which is largely inspired by what players have been complaining about for a long time, which is spending a lot of time in Spectre without that much to do, and not really knowing if their actions had influence on the game in any way.
So yeah,
And that's the balance that we've been striving for there.
in our public responses, it's a pretty common question why we have reworked heavy containment zone instead of any other zone. Why heavy containment zone? Heavy containment zone, and the official answer, which is 99% true, is that absolutely the role here is to gain some basic experience, have some smaller testing ground, a zone that needed to be changed, a zone that is the central zone that the most the zone that most players will have to pass through in order to do anything in game. It is also an easily splittable zone, so we can, like I was mentioning earlier, we can rework one room at a time, so it's a more manageable task than say a surface zone. And that is all true, but it also kind of started that, hey, let's just rework this one room, right, Jamie? You could probably say how it all started. So like it basically all started that you can give it some background how it started. I'm pretty sure you already explained it, but let's do it again.
Yeah, so the general timeline of what happened with HTZ is, I think the very, very first thing, there is a screenshot that I've shown before of Mora, who, by the way, we don't know who Mora is. Mora is the other art supervisor, and he was technically the one who started this HTZ rework. There was a screenshot that I've shown before of him saying somewhere in early January of this year, of a little screenshot of him in engine with a HCZ room, and he's just like, oh, I've just put some concrete textures on the ground just to see what it looks like. And that's pretty much where it started. He was just like testing to see if changing the texture in HCZ would help, you know, the place look different with because the lighting, which is why HCZ used to be, well, I say used to be, but like the HCZ was so bright is because it was all metallic textures, and you need more light for the metallic textures to be visible, otherwise it's gonna be really dark. And so Mora tried to put concrete to like be able to turn down the lights so that, you know, it's like more scary, spooky HCZ style. And it just sort of started spiraling from there. When I joined Northwood, Mora asked me to make a trim sheet for HCZ, so I did, and he replaced all the textures with my trim sheet, and he was like, wow, this is pretty good. We should just like add a little more, and then add a little more, and then add a little more. And yeah, and then all of a sudden it's November, and we have a completely new looking thing. that there's nothing like what HTC used to look like. So that's pretty much what happened.
So again, like we were planning for having heavy containment zone really finished. It's it's just a bunch of opportunities aligned correctly. So what I said before was absolutely true, that it helped us develop all the frameworks and all the workflows that we wanted, and also allowed us to experiment on a smaller scale. But it wouldn't be the case if we just didn't randomly decide, hey, I guess that's pretty cool, we want to work on that, let's rework heavy containment zone. So it has those extra benefits, and it's all true, and we knew that we had to develop those workflows anyway for surface zone. So we just decided to kill the two birds with one stone, do what we wanted to do and rework heavy containment zone, and get all of those issues addressed at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think the
Yeah.
earlier screenshot was January 15th. So that's to put into perspective how long the heavy containment zone project took. Anyway, thank you, JSlat, for $5 Canadian. Not the real
one?
JSlat.
No,
Not the real Switchlight, I don't think. No.
I think that answered your question about heavy containment zone. And also thank you, Lint Roller Da, for $2 USD. Will we be adding back the P90?
No. Next question.
That's it. Are you ready to show off the?
I am ready.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know which. Hold on. It's a new screen. Could you say something on Discord to make sure that Discord is still cached?
Yeah. Watermelon.
Everything seems to be working.
Yeah, but-
Okay. This is my thing, and I have two Unities open right now. I'm gonna go to the same location. I have the same seed on both of them. So this is the newer version. This is the slightly older version. Now, I'm gonna go to the scene, I'm gonna do something like that to show you a little bit. So this is the old version that I'm showing right now. This is how it works in game right now. I'm gonna go to my game manager, graphics and fog, and try to disable it for making it easier to present everything. And from the top-down view, I'll select my main camera, which is right here, and I also disable those. I can't disable them from here. There we go. So this is the top-down view of me looking around. As you can see, that's the calling system, which works pretty well in the current version. But the small... Hold on, I'll actually turn it back on. I'm just gonna make those icons smaller. There we go, so I can still see the other gizmos. Advanced room connector, disable these. There we go. So, it all works technically pretty well, because when I'm not looking in the direction of a room, that room disappears. It works pretty okay. It limits the number of rooms that need to be rendered at the same time, which is fine. It pretty much boosts our FPS, but let's try to do the exact same thing with the new calling system over here. I'm gonna bring it to similar layout, go to our main camera controller, isometric view, let's repeat the same steps, which is going to graphics, fog controller, disable that part. And now you may notice the first small difference. There are no more rooms around us anymore. That's because the doors are closed, and if I open the door, now all of those rooms appear. And the best part is, if I hide behind the door, these rooms disappear, because, well, now I can only see the Tesla gate because I can see it through that room. If I peek a little further, now I can see the next room. And then when I peek even further, now you can see that it's actually kind of disappearing, but that's because I disabled the fog. If I re-enable the fog, that room is now hidden in the fog, and that system also takes under consideration how far away the fog is. So that is a small, potentially huge optimization, maybe a small one, we don't know yet, we haven't measured the actual benefits of it yet, but the number of geometry, here I'm gonna quickly show again, compared to this part, if I open it and stay in the similar position, there we go, I'm pretty sure I'm looking in the similar poses, yep, that seems pretty okay, and yeah, you can see, this is the number of rooms that are rendered in the old version, this is the number of rooms that are rendered in the new version, there's only 3 rooms in here, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's actually warheads, so that's 6. 6 rooms over here. It's the same seed, so it's the same map, so there's no cheating in here. And again, this is the warhead here. Hopefully it's going to optimize the things slightly more. Yeah, when I'm going back now, certain rooms disappear since I no longer can see them. And there is a lot of geometry. I learned so much about trigonometry during these few days, and you can see how those portal rays interact with each other. When it passes through a portal, it effectively limits your FOV, which affects the further calling. Also the lights, if I move forward, the lights behind me disappear. And the whole system is virtually free, because I was running it at 100 calculations per second, and it was only taking 0.1 millisecond, which means it's virtually free. It's a couple... Oh, it was 1 millisecond at 100 speed, so it's one 100th of a millisecond to calculate it. And if you want a 60 FPS, then you have 16 milliseconds of budget. So again, like I'm talking about the overhead of the system itself. So the system itself has virtually no overhead, and it's really good at figuring out what needs to be rendered and what doesn't. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to share.
How much of an improvement is this one versus the old one?
So I can only show you the objective truths here, which is the number of geometry. The actual performance in real game haven't been measured yet. We don't know if that alone is going to boost your FPS significantly. At the end of the day, the performance is limited by its weakest point. So if we have a calculation somewhere that takes a long time, this calculation still is unaffected. We would need to connect to a server, we would need to release that build first with the new calling system, and then I can go to my analysis tools here in Windows, Analysis Profiler, and I can see what takes everything. And if I select this part here, we can see that rendering takes 9 milliseconds on this version. And if I go back to the newer version, and I go to Analysis Profiler, and pause it here, and it's taking 7.5 milliseconds, so it's smaller. We can compare the two. So again, not exactly sure. Let me just quickly, like I could technically measure the FPS from my editor, but I have two editors open and builds also work different than editors, so it's not going to be super reliable, but let's do it anyway. In this, let me just quickly close it. I'll just show you two editors. Very unreliable way of measuring it, by the way. I'm gonna stand somewhere here, look in this far fog. I have in editor 70 FPS on, I'm not sure which build it is. It's the new build. I have 70 FPS on the new build, and on the old build, in the same spot, looking here, I have 60, 58, so as I get like 10 FPS more in editor. And again, editor, 90% of what's happening in editor is actually the editor itself running it. So in game, the difference should be bigger, which I could probably measure in a second. I can actually hop on those two builds and tell you what's going on, but I'm gonna go back to talk, to my talk scene, and we can discuss other things while I'm setting this up. So yeah, let's do it. Let's continue.
Wow.
Okay. Honestly, I only have one more question that I want to bring up from this document, and afterwards we can move into the the live chat version of the Q&A. And that question is, it's a pretty big question. All the way at the very bottom of the document. What is the end goal of SCP Secret Laboratory?
The end goal?
The end goal.
The
end goal. There is no end goal. We'll just continue developing the game for as long as you play it, and as long as it remains financially viable for us. That's the short story. The long-term goals is just fixing whatever is broken with the current game, addressing the most frustrating issues, and hopefully just adding new content and improving what's already there. That's the long-term goal here. I'm not sure if anyone has any other visions for the end goal, but that's my vision.
I mean, you're Mr. Game Director. You're John Game Director, so like, I don't know what we can say.
I know, if you disagree, go ahead. You can overrule me if you want.
I would like to just affirm and add on top of that, just from experience. With this is, I'm sort of sidetracking it, but it's about containment breach. Like containment breach, you know, we never planned to just be like, oh yeah, this is gonna be the last update. Ha
For the
ha ha.
record, Jamie worked
You know.
for Containment Breach. I'm just gonna quickly point out because not
Yeah,
everyone needs to know
sorry.
it. So
Yeah, I worked on Containment Breach. So when the development ended for Containment Breach, it wasn't just like, oh yep, we're done, Containment Breach over, lol. It was more like, you know, how many people are actually playing the game? You know, is there actually anything we want to add to the game? And we started to sort of like, no, you know, it's just there was just less things that we could do for the game, and so you know, it just sort of slowly trickled out and ended. You know, so I feel like if like that's just what might happen in Secret Lab, like that's just like how I see it, because that's the experience that I've had already for an SCP game, is that we will just do things and at some point, you know, it will trickle out or stuff like that. You never know, man. Stuff happens.
yeah,
So,
even if we do have
end
an
goal?
end goal, so yeah, like end goal, like I said, it's probably not something that we know right now. Maybe we will reach a point in the future where we really don't know what to add in the game anymore, and we're just gonna give up at that point, or just decide, you know what, the game is good enough, whatever we try to change it makes it worse, so let's just keep it as is. That is a possibility that we're gonna reach that point. There's also a possibility that we will have an end goal, we will have plans for the whole game, but there's going to be 50 players who still care about this game because everyone else has left to play other games. That is also a possibility. So right now there's no vision that we have right now. We are just dealing with what we have. We're trying to expand about what we have with the most recent surveys that we give to the community, and that is the plan that we have right here. X3, would you mind if I tease the achromatic abatement change that we made?
Yeah, sure. That's a
But
cool one.
That's going to be, I'm just quickly validating the file so we can answer one more question.
Really? Okay. I'll look for an interesting one. Boring question.
Give me art questions.
Sure, I'll look for an art question.
Was that the last question from our scripted?
No, not really, but like that was the last interesting question.
Alright.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, look at this. This might be fun. Will we add new will we add new zones beside light, entrance, and heavy?
I mean, I feel like that's actually a question for you, mainly, X, because it's kind
Me?
of narrative. Well, it's
No,
kind of
that's
narrative.
a
focused.
game-
I'm kind of playing hot potato here because no one wants to answer that question because
Okay,
like, everyone
damn,
has-
I'll answer it as an art supervisor, so you know, not someone who can actually answer this question.
I could answer it.
Oh,
Soup
Soup
can
can
answer
answer it. Go ahead, Soup.
New zones currently no, in the sense that we're not going to be like, oh, we're going to create the toilet zone that's connected to heavy, and it's a whole new zone. But like, also kind of in the way that we're looking on reworking zones, it's like it's such like far departure from like what they already are in terms of like gameplay and art and everything, that it's like it's like no, but kind of yes.
Zones that are reworked won't look like their original zones, is for sure.
Yeah.
we may expand on it, we may split it in some ways. There is a possibility, not really planned right now. We had a lot of ideas in the past, and the reason I said we are kind of playing hot potato is because everyone had their own vision about what we want to do here, and we couldn't convince each other what's the best way to do. So we basically agreed to just keep what we have right now. The current split works pretty well. It's not the most realistic one. It's maybe not the most exciting in certain aspects. Each zone is going to have some smaller issues that we could resolve with other designs, but those designs would introduce another issues that we are not sure we would be able to resolve. Right now, we just decided to stick with the devil we know. That's basically it. So we're not planning on doing any changes regarding that.
Okay. I think we can move on to the game, what Hubert wanted to show us.
I just switched to the wrong version, but we can do it. So I'm just gonna. So I'm currently on the calling optimization branch right here. I switched to the wrong one. But
Is it not here?
It's not the achromatic abatement branch, but we can go to some areas and I can just take a couple of, so like, okay, let's just do, going in here I have 180 frame rate, which is, I don't, oh, it's actually frame limited. I don't think I've ever hit that limit before, or is it? Do I have VSync on? Oh yeah, I have VSync on, okay. Okay, so I'm getting 180 I'm gonna take some measurements, and this is again single player create game basically. Oh, I'm getting up to 200. Okay, I'm gonna do 180 to 200 in like the corner HCZ. So this is the new optimized quote unquote version. If I open all doors, all the magic will disappear, right? Wow, not really. Oh my god, that's actually surprising. Again, not sure if that's going to be the case if I join a 30 player server. Probably not. But in this case, the same corner with doors open. Doors open. It's between 170 to 180. That's what we have here. Let's go to light containment zone. Also, all the doors open. Let's do GR18 inner. I'm just gonna look through the glass. And that is 160 to 190 from what I'm seeing here. Let's just keep it that way. And let's do one in entrance, and that's going to be it. And then I'm gonna switch to quickly to let's do intercom. Where is intercom? Intercom. Okay, intercom, looking straight up. 180, 190, that's what I'm seeing here. 170 slightly. Let's do 180, 190. So this is the intercom. Now I'm gonna switch to the other branch. So, apologies. We're back to another question while I'm switching to the other branch because I switched to the incorrect one. But we'll at least know what are the differences. Next question.
Oh, you're really pulling my leg, yeah.
Or we can just wait approximately 1 minute while my game is updating. We can just take something from the chat. Hello,
Sure.
Icy Guy.
Let me see. Let me take a look at the chat. Any super chats recently?
GPU
Thank you,
does-
Crip, for €2.
So that is-
15.0 when?
15.0 N. I don't know. I just wanted to point out
Longer
that
than a week.
I do have a pretty big rig for my PC. So like you, even in single player, you probably will be getting less FPS than 180. I have the most recent Intel and the most recent GPU for consumer market. So like, I'm pretty sure I'm on the higher end when it comes to the FPS values, but it still should be pretty high regardless. CP currently is a bit too CPU intensive. Even if you have a great graphics card, but you have terrible CPU, or you have just a mid CPU, you're probably going to be bottlenecked by your CPU. That is something that can potentially be resolved if you switch to Vulkan. So if you have a good GPU and lower end CPU, you can try switching your API, your rendering API to Vulkan, and hopefully it's going to work out. Let me go back to screen. And okay. Oh no, my watermark. Is that my IP address? I hope it's not.
What?
I don't know. No idea what it was. I'm waiting for my ping from security team. Uber, what have I done? You just leaked. I don't know what I leaked. Anyway, before I show the cool stuff, let's do the measurements while we're already at it. So, corner of heavy containment zone armory. Previously I was getting 180 to 200. Right now I'm only getting 120, 130, so you can see it's much less on the older pre-optimized version of the game. When I open all doors, previously I was getting 170 to 180. If I now open them, I'm getting 111, 130, 120. So again, 50 FPS less than I was getting previously. Now if we go to GR18 inner and look straight up, previously I was getting 160 to 190. It seems to be mostly the same, although I'm getting drops way below 110. Previously I was getting dips into 160s, and now this seems to be accurate. So there's not that much of a difference, but it still seems to be about 30 FPS more. And then intercom, looking straight up. Previously I was getting 180 to 190. In here it's between 160, 180. 175 more. So yeah, like it's between like 20 to 60 FPS more on the newer version on single player on my computer, which again, like if we have to normalize those values to like 60, so we have 60 out of let's do 200 out of sorry, it's 260 out of 200, so it's like 30% increase, so let's do it times 60. So if you are getting 60 FPS in single player and you're not bottlenecked by your CPU already, you can expect 78. And again, if you're not bottlenecked by the CPU, because it's cooling the geometry, so it's mostly you know, fixing the GPU. I have 4090, so I'm not sure if I'm actually limited by the GPU here or not. I don't know. I can actually check in my task manager. Whoops. Okay.
You can expect a 30% increase in performance.
Yeah, so again, don't expect. It's not that like again, haven't been
Statistically.
tested. So statistically, on my setup, this is the results I'm getting. It will probably vary. So I'm very careful when I'm making any promises like that. I don't want to say, oh, Hubert, you promised 60 more FPS and and the game still runs like shit. Okay, so like it is on my PC. It's on my end. The main problem here again. I would probably need to open the profiler on a computer which is more limited by the GPU and more by the CPU. We'll see. Maybe we're gonna add it as a option in the settings, whether or not like if certain operations. Or no, actually no. Now I'm thinking about it. That wouldn't be. There is no option that would allow us to limit CPU usage because the new calling is virtually CPU free. So there would be no reason to disable the calling. But yeah, anyway.
So is this new cool?
I closed the game and I was supposed to show the achromatic evade. I'm launching it again. I'm launching it again. I'm sorry. Okay, chill out.
Question from chat. Let's see. Thank you, Jay Schlatt, for $5 Canadian. What has been your favorite thing that you have worked on in SCP Secret Laboratory? Everyone in chat, starting from the top.
Each of has worked in a cell that you have worked on, whatever it made in the game.
What's your favorite thing?
Good question. I would say the first weaponry work, Parabellum, was pretty enjoyable to do. I liked working on it. I'm a guy who likes refactoring old code for whatever reason. It's a good trade in programmers. Probably not good for when it comes to finishing things quickly. No, it is good for long term. Like it's good for maintainability of the project. It's just like not the most efficient way to get a feature implemented as soon as possible. But like realistically, I do enjoy reworking certain things. The thing about programmers is that you usually hate it until you see the results. Once you see the results, you're the happiest person alive. But when you're actually still working on that feature and you send it to QA and QA denies this request because it's denies the build because it's completely broken and not working or anything like that, and then you need to go through 50 iterations to make it playable, that isn't the best feeling. But once you actually get it done, it's just the best thing in the world. You're just the happiest person. Okay, let's go to the next person.
I think the thing that I had the most fun working on was 173's rework during Parabellum. It was my first big creative challenge as a game designer. Trying to figure out how to take an SCP that is like 4 paragraphs long, with very little in-law support for abilities or different things that it can do, was deeply challenging. Not something that I'd really get from other playable SCPs that have a lot of content and a lot of ideas that you can work around. I would definitely pick that every single time. I had a lot of fun working on it.
Yeah, I remember old 173. Old 173 was just, he was fast. He can left click people.
You got the bit, you go up the staircase and die instantly.
Walk up a staircase, get killed by anti-cheat. That was fun SCP. Good old SCPSO. So, Jamie, what's your favorite thing?
My favorite
You only
thing.
have one thing that was your favorite to work on.
What's been your favorite thing you've
Well,
worked on?
and what would that be,
SCPSO?
Hubert?
Yeah.
I'm scared.
So yeah, so what would be your favorite thing that you worked for 14.0, since this is your first update that you
Or SCPSO?
for-
Well,
SCPSO.
man, I wonder what it could be. Maybe it's the only thing that I worked on for all like 10 months of the update.
Well, which
Yeah,
specific
I mean-
room? Okay, so let's narrow the
Be
question
more
for you. What
specific, be more
specific room
specific.
did you enjoy the most?
Probably. Oh no, I'll say 106's room was pretty fun, because I did it. It was just like I was kind of happy that I had so much like freedom with it.
Mm.
Well, that was until the narrative and game designers came in and shut down my top idea.
So for those who
I'm
don't
never
know, Jamie wanted
No,
to have the
I'm
tarp connected, like anchored to the ground, which means there would be a physical connection to the cage, which defies the whole point of the cage being suspended in the air. If you can connect the tarp to the ground, why not just hang the the cage instead
Hang
of
the
going
cage.
instead of going for like 50 million megawatts of power and keep a couple of tons of steel suspended in the air, wasting probably an entire
But it
town of
Entire small
electricity.
village.
so cool.
I feel so bad
Yeah.
about that, but I don't regret it.
I
had
don't
to
regret
crush
it
Jamie's
either.
dream.
I had to.
Well,
we
then
had
you
to
don't
crush your
feel bad
dream.
about it. Honestly. Anyway, yeah. So 106 was probably my favorite room. You know, I did it in the span of like like a week and a half. Oh my god, Tesla! I completely forgot about it. I made the Tesla room while I was in hospital. that
Yes,
was a pretty fun.
the
That was
story.
a fun experience.
Yeah.
I was.
I
Sitting
was
there on
asking
my
Jamie,
laptop.
Jamie, how's the Tesla, Jamie? I'm in the hospital. I was like, I don't care, get the Tesla down.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like. So I was like, oh yeah, oh, yes sir, sorry sir, and I coughed my lungs up as I modeled the Tesla.
He hasn't left the hospital ever since. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm still there.
Which is in the basement.
And soup. How about soup?
What about me?
Yeah. Well, what was your favorite thing you've worked on for 14.0? Be specific. Don't just say heavy containment zone.
I really enjoyed working on heavy containment zone. I'm not gonna lie.
All right.
Any
That's your
specific
answer?
room?
Well, I designed only one of the rooms added in 14.0, so
Oh right.
that one, I guess.
Chromatic abatement.
Yeah.
That was like pretty good. to
Achromatic
market.
abatement is a big concept. The idea of it being rotated by 45 degrees. I was so.
I was like, that was ingenious. We were
That
like,
was
what? We can
that
do
was
that.
so obvious, like in retrospect, but like the fact that no one thought about it, and yeah, it
We
really
can start
does.
rotating. We can start rotating more rooms. We can do 30 degrees, 20 degrees.
Be good.
That was like such an obvious idea.
So
When you came up with it, everyone was like, "What? Oh my god, you can do that!"
Would you mind if would you mind if Soup said which room for the next update?
You know what? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
For the next update, like I don't know any rooms for the next update. I'll say a room that I've helped work on that I know is going to be in the next update. I hope. Server rooms, the server room rework. I know Pluky's been working on it. I've been looking through it with her, and it's looking really good. I'm really excited for that. Yeah.
Alright.
The new server rooms. Nice, nice.
Or the replacement for the server room. X3, your turn.
Yeah. I like the lore. You know, obviously, everything I do is perfect. Anyways, next question.
Alright, how about we show the achromatic abatement things here? We've gotten a bunch of donates in the meanwhile, but I'm not sure if we'll be able to answer all the questions. Thank you, Rosan, and thank you, Chaos Agent. I'm gonna quickly show the achromatic abatement, and then we'll go back to the questions from chat. So we have a... Okay, I'm just gonna stay quiet for here. I'm not sure if you can hear the game. Oh, now you can, okay. Can you hear that? Is that peak? I'm completely breaking the immersion by my webcam. I'm gonna do it again. So yeah, that's it.
People are asking, is it Fmod?
It's not Fmod. It's a very simple script that I made for achromatic abatement, which, by the way, because I know that those questions are coming, whether or not it's going to be the case for every room and everything, it's all baked. So like when the map generation happens, the room position is being baked. You can even see the glitches that are happening here because the game doesn't expect me to enter the area from this position. So it only works really for the doors and for other things like that. The way the script works, it just calculates the position, calculates the bounding boxes of the achromatic abatement, and then it checks your nearest position to the door. If you're in the achromatic abatement, it plays the regular sound. If it's behind a locked door, it plays the muffled sound. And when you open the door, the state of the door dictates the blend between those two sounds. And again, like, it's a pretty simple script which is baked specifically for achromatic abatement. It would work for technically other room effects. So if we ever wanted to have a room with specific ambient, a specific loud ambience like the waterfall effect, we could reuse that script, but it's not going to work for anything dynamic. So any gunshots behind doors, anything like any voice or anything generated on the go isn't really going to work. Also, it uses pre-baked muffled sounds. So the fact that it's muffled, it's not being muffled in the real time. It's a pre-recorded, pre-muffled version of the sound. So it's not even being dynamically adjusted. It's just an illusion. It's not a real. It's not Fmod. It's just a very cheap from performance perspective, very cheap way of getting this effect, and it's not really scalable. Okay, that's all I wanted to show.
Cool. Yeah, you know what? Welcome, Fmod. Close enough. Anyway, so let's read a couple of the super chats. Get all those get all those questions answered. We'll do a quick intermission, and then we'll open the Q&A to chat proper. Alta, 5 Singaporean dollars. Thank you. Really love the changes to 106 and 14.0. Will there be similar buffs to 049 in the future? Also, will proximity chat return to 939 or even 049?
Definitely want to try to improve 049 in the future. It's definitely one of the oldest characters in terms of gameplay and the model itself. You know, I've even seen this compilation of all the different changes, and 049 is just being used there as like a point of comparison to what the game used to look like, because it's still like that. 100% want to work more on 049 and make the gameplay more fun. As for voice chat, proximity voice chat for the SCPs, that's probably not going to happen. We're pretty satisfied with 939's ability to mimic voices, and that's about it.
How about for 049? That was also a question.
Yeah, that applies to 049 too. We might explore it during the time where we're reworking 049. But there aren't any particularly solid plans to have them talk.
Alright. So, art question. Could we get female models or like customization in general for the player models? Thank you, Ross.
At the moment, it's not in the plans. That's all I really have to say about that. It's not really in the plans at the moment. In the future, you know what? We might revisit the idea. Who knows? Even we don't know yet.
Okay. Next question. Chaos Agent, thank you for $5. Wish Deputation was still here with us to answer this. But maybe Hubert, you can do it. How are we combating cheaters in the game? Do we have any plans to take more action against them?
I'm just gonna quickly ask a question in the chat. Do you feel like a cheater problem in SL right now is a big enough problem that would potentially require us to take more invasive actions, like developing a kernel level anti-cheat? Because I play the game a lot, and maybe it's just my luck, but I don't really get that many cheaters in my games. I maybe get like one a year. They're usually, when the cheaters happen, they usually target one specific server. So maybe if you're from that specific server, maybe that is where the problem is. The server is being targeted. But realistically, I don't really feel like currently there is a need to escalate the invasion of our anti-cheat. We are still developing our user level anti-cheats, so we're constantly updating it with the hacks that we see online. We add them to I don't know exactly how our anti-cheat works. I'm not even gonna guess, and even if I knew, I probably shouldn't have saying like exactly how it works. So yeah, realistically, I feel like currently our existing anti-cheat is doing good enough of a job to the point where when cheaters are not a big frustration for the game, are not a huge problem in the game. And again, it's from my experience. The next step of like actually stopping it if it escalated too far would be developing some form of kernel level anti-cheat, which is something that I would really not want to do because there are security concerns regarding that. You're basically installing malware on your device. I feel like kernel level anti-cheats are I pretty much at this point I refuse installing new games that require new kernel level anti-cheats on my own PC, mostly because I know a thing or two about security, so I'm trying not to do that. But yeah, like this is something that I would really like to avoid unless it's a very big problem in the game that would require us to take that action. So yeah. We will continue developing our existing anti-cheat, our existing client mode, user mode anti-cheat, and hopefully that's going to be good enough for a game to be enjoyable enough.
Ever seen Hacker? I don't.
I've maybe seen like a year ago at most.
I've rarely seen them, but
and
maybe
it's
that's
usually like they join the server, they spin bot for a while and get banned after the first kill, and like no one remembers that the next round. So like I personally I don't think it's that big to the point where we would need to escalate the invasion of people's privacy for the sake of keeping cheaters away from the game.
Alright, next. Thank you, Myastic, for 2 USD. Will different MTF ranks have different outfits? I think you mentioned this, Hubert, earlier about like different looking MTF.
Not planned currently. We are planning on potentially having more variants in the player models. Maybe purchasable player skins. We don't know, like agents, like in CS:GO. Again, nothing confirmed, nothing like that. Maybe some just random variants for like between players, so we are not all clones. So there's some room to do that. We designed those systems for it to be as flexible as possible. Right now, there are no real plans in either way.
Last question before intermission. So thank you, player name, for $5 Canadian. Jamie, you answer this. Could there be weather or time variance for the surface zone, like being cloudy or raining, or being midnight or dawn?
Yeah, so the reason we don't have it, first of all, is because we probably never thought about doing that. But the problem with doing stuff like nighttime, daytime cycles specifically is that having an environment be nighttime and an environment be daytime is two drastically different gameplay scenarios. For example, like, it's harder to see someone at night, whereas it's easier to see someone at day. As for weather effects, I mean, as cool as it would be to have weather effects, it just seems like something that wouldn't be 100% necessary for Surface Zone.
Resources that could be spent more efficiently elsewhere.
Yeah. It's also, Surface Zone is only 1/4 of the game. It's also the smallest zone, I think, actually by size. And, half of it is also undercover.
And
so
his main purpose is
like
just get into the facility, so like it's not even the central point of playing the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's not planned. Maybe when we get around to doing a Surface Zone rework, we could add some sort of very mild weather effect that isn't too heavy on performance. But at the moment, there's no plan on doing anything like that.
I could show up the new FPS models. In the meanwhile, I have already booted up. I'm just gonna quickly go
You can
here.
do that.
So, whoops. Why does it keep? Why OBS keeps losing the thing? Okay. So we have new view models for the new. Like this is coming in the next beta patch, which should hopefully be relatively soon. We have new sleeves for D-Class in here, as you can see. It's different from, it's using the proper jumpsuit that the previous model did not have of the hands. So there are the new hand models. If I go as a scientist, I have also my lab coat. I like using medkit because medkit actually gives you an idea of the entire sleeves. You have a nice model of the entire sleeves. MTF. I'm gonna go to somewhere where I can see things. Yeah, so we have MTF. Let's do chaos. I'm actually gonna reset my thing. We have new chaos view models, and everything is working pretty well. Did I miss anything? We have guard.
Tutorial as well, don't you?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, did you say you were gonna talk more about the nuke? Or did I miss here?
I said tutorial. Sorry, my microphone's
Oh.
terrible. I'm using my laptop.
I completely misunderstood what you said. I thought you said I could talk a bit about the nuke. I thought that's what you said. All right, here is the tutorial. It's basically the MTF but with red sleeves.
Love the red sleeves. Red sleeves awesome.
They're pretty cool, yeah.
Let's speak. Okay, well, back to questions.
So folks, we're gonna have a quick intermission, and when we're back, we're gonna open up the questions in chat. We'll use the YouTube Q&A function, and through there you can shoot us a couple of questions. Remember, the people in this channel are Hubert Moshka, Game Director, Jamie, Art Supervisor, Soup, Level Designer, and me, the Narrative Designer. So if you have any relevant
lead game
questions,
designer.
and Cross Lead Game Designer, but at the moment she's she's at the moment AFK. So, yeah. But 5 of us ask relevant questions. Yeah. Anyways, we'll be right back after these messages.
The commercial, is that where I put the commercial on, or did I put that mirror
Yes,
back
put
screen?
Put the
Okay.
commercial on, and then. Welcome back to Oddities and Offers, Marshall Duck's #1 paranormal marketplace. Are you tired of the paranormal paramilitary organization known as the Chaos Insurgency raiding your facility? Well, Marshall Cutter and Duck has just the thing you need. We at MCND have partnered with esteemed taumaturgists to develop this newest product. Say hello to your very own Chaos Insurgent. Using Eve Quantum Isolation, each plushie is linked to a random real-life Chaos Insurgent, proven and supported by studies from the Center of Unified Taumatology. Whatever you choose to do with this plushie will happen to the human being linked to it. The Chaos Insurgent plushie will never do the following: spy on you, explode, infect you with a mimetic hazard. It will, however, make you happy. Whether you're catching up on your favorite literature or enjoying a cold, refreshing beverage. Whether you are SCP, GOC, or MCND, go and arm your intermittent vengeance today. Remember, Marshall, Carter, and Dark do not always deal with terrorists, no matter who tells you otherwise.
All right, we're back. As you
Alright,
saw,
okay.
we have our. I mean, it's already been a video, so it's not a secret, and we've been trying to reach everyone where possible. But we have a new makeshift campaign. I don't actually have the plushie with me. Lion has, but we have the new plushie. You just need to imagine. I mean, you saw the video, so you don't have to imagine anything. But we have a Chaos Insurgency plushie, similar to those plushies that we previously made with makeshift. 173 has green eyes which are being completely keyed out. It's not like it has holes. It looks like it has holes, but in reality it's just a green screen. But yeah, we have new plushie coming up. I believe it's going to start shipping in May. Start delivering, but it's I will need to double check, so don't quote me on that. But we are currently in the crowdfunding phase where you can pre-order your plushie, and if we manage to sell at least 200 of these plushies, it will be delivered. So far we've managed to fund all of our campaigns with relatively large margin, but we would still appreciate your support if you could. If you want to support us, that's one of the best ways. You can support us on Patreon, you can buy our plushies, you can buy our merch. You can even sell a super chat if you want. That is one of the ways of supporting development as well. So thank you all for your support, and I believe we are back to the questions. I'm gonna put 173 back where he belongs, right here.
Yeah.
There we go.
So this is gonna be a very, very quick burst fire round of things. We're not gonna be delve too deep into the answers.
Yeah,
but
we've been streaming for a while now. We're probably gonna get to the next few questions and finish the stream right here.
so let's get a couple of questions done. So let's see, gameplay wise, do we have any plans for Cassie functionality such as the Cassie room?
We definitely love to have a room dedicated to Cassie. As for functionality, that could only go to future experimentation.
Level design. Soup, could you talk about whether or not we're doing a redo to the 096 room?
Yeah, we're doing a redo to the 096 room.
Nice, simple. Will Heavy Containment Zone ever get another rework? Asks Dostriva.
Yeah,
I
Jamie,
hope
when-
not.
I hope
Jamie,
not.
are you ready for another reward?
It's in a really good state.
Terrible.
Thank you, random person, for $2. Chicken, yeah. Will
Chicken,
Entrance
what
Zone be Will Entrance Zone be reworked soon?
Soon.
No.
Soon is a very dangerous word at Northwood Studios, but
Soon TM. It
as
will
soon
be...
as soon can be.
We will
For
do it, just maybe not soon.
for Christmas, will SCP-1507 come back?
We don't know yet. We don't know if it's just going to be a rehash of the last season. I mean, you're there is a chance that like there. That question kind of caught me off guard because we don't really have an answer just yet. It's less than a month to Christmas, and I don't believe we have started any work on the Christmas update. We're all hands on deck when it comes to 14.0 release. So if it's easy to, we will just try porting from the last year what we can. If something doesn't work, we're gonna scrap it from that year. We might have another patch after Christmas, like, because we are planning, it's usually like we combine it with New Year and you know, the release anniversary, which happened on 29th. So like there is a chance we're gonna add more content after the release of the Christmas update or the Christmas event. But again, like currently we're just brainstorming right now. Like there's nothing is confirmed right now, nothing is set in stone. Worst case scenario, we're not gonna have any event at all. But the more realistic scenario is that we're going to have some small rehashing of the previous last year with a possibility of certain features not making it back. Right now our priority is 14.0 and making sure that everything works in that.
Otavio asks, are you going to update the F1 art for the human models, for the new human models?
Not planned right now. Maybe eventually someday, yeah. But right now it's similar enough. Like it's not that, like, there are certain models that obviously look much different, like the MTF model, or the guard model isn't even that different. Like you could argue that the it's a
Only
start.
difference is baklava.
Yeah, the baklava is just artistic choice, artistic adding.
How's the micro HID stuff, Hubert? What's the progress on that?
Micro HID hasn't changed too much. I was mostly focused on fixing issues, optimization, and adding and updating art, which has been pretty much neglected on my end from the release. There are certain issues in the game animations and certain visual issues which I haven't been addressing for a while, so I'm kind of prioritizing it right now. But I am since yesterday I'm back on the micro HID. I can confirm that all firing modes are fully implemented. The only thing that remains to be implemented is audio and visual effects. I started implementing the animations. Right now we have a working inspect and the first time pickup animations, but there's you can fire the micro, you just won't be able to hear or see any effects. But mechanically it's pretty much done. I'm not sure when it's going to be released. I'm hoping within a week, maybe within 2 weeks. No promises yet. That's assuming that this is the only project that I'll have to work on, which probably won't be, but we'll see.
Woodboys asks, is SCPSL a game that would be open to collaborations, whether that be more company similar to Makeship or other video games? I can answer that. 100% yes. We love collaborating with other creators. We love collaborating with other SCP creators and video game companies specifically. The SCP video game scene is a very, very, very niche and small scene, and the SCP scene is also equally as niche. So like we gotta be strong together, you know. Like if you're an SCP content creator, contact me SCP Illustrated, and contact me Inner Sloth. We can partner among us.
Let's not make that statement. We don't want to send any people in there. We don't. That's not the way of getting any collabs.
Don't do that. Don't mention that on Twitter. Okay, I mean X. Sorry.
I think it's just Mr. Illustrated now.
Mr. Illustrated, really? Oh.
Yeah.
Alright. Let's see. Are you planning on reverting the 106 buff? Monkey asks. He's insanely powerful now.
There are definitely some areas that we went a little bit too far on. I definitely see that there's some camping going on, particularly in Nuke Room and Earth-9. I want to try to make some adjustments to alleviate that, but I like the place that 106 is in.
Same.
In terms of gameplay.
I had a chance of playing 106 3 times and it was absolutely beautiful to play as, and I don't feel like playing against 106 has been that much sacrifice. I have had a lot of chances playing against 106 and I feel like this was the rework, or sorry, the balance patch in the right direction. It gave 106 a necessary buff, which didn't make it terrible to play against. There are obviously some edge cases which can be exploited, which we will have to address, but the core gameplay itself is peak.
My good man, some random name asks, hi, I have multiple questions. Hello. I sent before I realized, but most questions were scripted. First question, will subclasses like D-Class Janitor be added? And 2, will Surface be randomized for the rework? Second question, Jamie.
Second question, Jamie? I'm not sure if Jamie knows
Second
all the
Jamie?
specific about Surface.
I mean, well, we could probably answer like, will Surface Zone, will the layout of Surface Zone be randomized, or will it be like a set thing?
The layout will be the same all the times, I believe so.
Yeah,
right, Cross?
yeah, I'm pretty sure.
We might have some varying elements within that map. The map itself will be static, but we
Could be
would
like
love
some
to
clutter
explore
elements,
the idea. Yeah,
some random
It's
forklifts here and
actually
there
really
and
heavy.
stuff like that. Maybe something like that, right?
different ways of navigating the map, but generally the same learnable layout.
Yeah, and for the first question about subclasses, we mentioned it earlier in the stream. You can rewatch the VOD later on. We pretty much said that it's not off the table. It is definitely something we can explore with the human classes to add more subclasses. AMDTV asks, has Northwood realized the similarity between Outlast 1 lore and SCP-SL, Secret Lab, Big Breach, etc.? No, I'm not really familiar with Outlast lore. You can message me on Discord about that. We can have a chat about that. It sounds interesting. Next question, let's see. Cactus, is the old 173 model going to be added back ever?
No.
Mostly because of legal reasons, right? Someone could probably like
Legal
explain
and
that.
identity reasons. So like 173, the original model has been made by an artist, and that artist had nothing to do with creation of 173. It was just a photo of a sculpture that he made, and the original SCP-173 article included that photo as the illustration of SCP-173. The artist, the sculptor who made that sculpture, didn't know about it being used for 173, and when he found out about it, he was okay with the community using it for non-commercial purposes. SL is very much in the gray area when it comes to the non-commercial usage, since the game is free, the asset that we would be downloading is free, but we are still getting revenue from the game. So like that is the legal gray area, whether or not that is the commercial use. And at the end of the day, we don't have an explicit license from that artist. It's the SCP community is also discouraged from contacting that artist, asking for any additional permissions or licenses. The artist was okay with a non-commercial use for fun within the community. So we decided to, and that was again that was his goodwill, that it's not something that he was legally obligated to give us. So realistically, we would just want to respect the fact that the artist does not want this sculpture to be used without a proper license, and we just decided to make our own. And also, we now have plushies on the new design, which is unrelated to the original artist sculpture. So like, why would we change it? We already have a well-established model for 173.
Yeah. Cross, could you, Flaming Rekka asks, could you briefly explain how you got into game design?
Game design for me has always been something that's hooked me. It goes back to when I was a young kid at 3 years old playing Halo on the original Xbox. I would always love to like deconstruct how games like talked to the player in a sense. You know, like there's one thing that games do that a lot of people don't realize. It's very subtle but very common. Like you get these lights that are above doorways that attract your eyes to certain places, or you have enemies with colorful attacks so that you can see where they are, or damage indicators so that you know where an enemy has come from. Stuff like that always fascinated me. And as I grew up, I learned more and more about how this works, and eventually I realized that that's a career you can take, and that's pretty much when I found about Northwood and applied here.
Very nice.
Very nice, cool. Couple of these questions that I'm seeing, such as additional roles like janitor, optimization, next zone rework, 096 as an NPC or an environmental hazard. We've answered this earlier in the stream, so you could definitely rewatch the VOD later on once we're done with this. So we're gonna pick a couple more questions and then I think we can be done. It's been a while already. So let's see. Will there ever be visible armor tiers when worn by players for every class? I think Jamie knows about that more.
Yeah, I can say that we have experimented with the idea. As for if it's ever actually going to be implemented, I wouldn't count on it. That's all I have to say about that.
You wouldn't count on it?
Wouldn't count on it, but we have tried.
Oh, this is a good question to end on, I think. Dr. Dinspit asks, when is Unity 6 coming? And will there be anything new for the game as a whole with the addition of Unity 6?
Right now we're trying to make sure there's as little for the game to come with Unity 6 as possible. Right now we're struggling with making it so the game works the same way. There are certain changes in Unity 6 which ended up affecting how certain audio sounds play, and I also believe that our system admins had some smaller issues with Unity 6. Right now we're just doing our best to bring Unity 6 as close to what we have right now with Unity 2021 as possible. There are not that many issues, there are not that many changes in Unity 6 compared to Unity 2021. The update that we made in Refracted Reality was much bigger, so this is hopefully going to be something that we can resolve relatively quickly. We're hoping to have the Unity 6 out in a few, well, actually days. Like not days, but not weeks either. We're trying to get it somewhere in the middle of public beta, so we can still iron out any last issues and see if there are any stability concerns before we make the full release. So yeah, that's the answer that we have right now. There's no ETA. There is also no changes that ideally you will be noticing. We notice that there's also some extra performance, but again, not going to do promises that we still haven't tested in large environments.
Right, that's that. I think that's enough questions for now. If any of you have any additional questions, I'm sure you can hop on over to our Steam forums or our public Discord and get your questions answered there. But for now, on this live stream, I think we've answered enough questions. I think we've spoken far enough, more than enough. And yeah.
Yeah. So
Anybody
that's
want to
it.
close off?
I can close off. So thank you for coming in the stream. I hope you enjoyed it, and well, we'll see you on the next one. Hopefully not that far in the future. I'm not sure if there are any closing notes that I should put.
Hope everyone has had a fun time with the public beta, and I hope everyone continues to enjoy the public beta, you know?
Yep. And thank you for
Bye-bye.
your continued support. Bye, our plushie. Bye.
Buy our plushie.
I just realized I don't have the ending screen on my thing, so I'm just gonna cut to black. Goodbye.